everybody, and thank you for your attendance tonight. I do have apologies from Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Mann. I'd first like to City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangiri and Nurrungeri people, the traditional custodians of the land and surrounding waters where we work and live. We acknowledge their deep connection to country and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and that's extended to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Australia. So tonight's briefing is specifically on the annual business plan and budget. This is workshop number 5, and it's the opportunity to go through the public consultation that we received over the last 22 days, and including the public meeting that we had last week. So members would have received quite a detailed pack, and in that pack you had a summary of the community engagement and those what we received to date, the updated statement of expected revenue, the draft operating budget summary, the draft capital budget summary, and also just an overview of the workshop paper. So Kelly's going to take you through just a quick overview of what we heard during the consultation. We're looking at some of those options and where we sit currently in preparedness for what we look to do is a special council meeting next Monday for either amendments or not to the draft annual business and budget for adoption. So I'm going to hand over to Kelly and then we'll workshop through any of your questions.
Thanks, Victoria. So in terms of the public consultation, we released consultation on the 8th of June. As Victoria said, 22-day period which closed at 5 p.m. On last Wednesday, 1st of July. So the main objectives of the consultation was about informing the community, encouraging feedback and community participation, and also to raise awareness of council services programs and initiatives. In terms of the promotion for the public consultation, there are a number of methods that were used, including on our website, advertising on both social media, public notices, and in the paper. We also emailed out newsletters through email, as well as printed copies and direct emails to different groups. And there are a number of items in the local papers which we've just had a little snip of that up on the screen to show the amount of promotion. In terms of the feedback itself, we had 43 survey responses. We had 27 people attending the public meeting last week and 7 written submissions were received. So a pretty good result in terms of what we normally get through a public consultation on the annual business plan. The key themes that came out through the responses and the submissions was about council rates, as expected. The most common theme was saying that the 6.4% rate increase was too high in consideration of the 1.5 above CPI. There was a lot of commentary around responsible financial management and financial sustainability, talking about ensuring that we balance budgets, control expenditure, focus on debt and what debt was used for, as well as a number of commentary about the ASCOSA review that was done and the concerns that were raised through that. There was also a number of comments around investment priorities, around where council should be spending its money, essentially in what areas. And there was a significant amount around the Victor Harbor Oval and the entrance there received from cricket club members as well. In terms of the budget considerations before council, I've just put up a small table to sort of show the 3 of the options, they're not the only options, and what each of those options provide council in consideration. So the 6.4% average rate rise includes a financial sustainability index. It addresses ASCOSA's concerns, considers the Audit and Risk Committee comments. It's in line with the long-term financial plan, maintains existing services and is immediately achievable in terms of being able to raise those funds. What it doesn't do is address those the consultation rate rise concerns that came through with those 47 responses and the submissions that were put in. The other option was for council to go back to the 4.9% average rate rise. Again, showing what that does in terms of ticks and crosses across the same categories. What it would mean without cutting services is that there would be a bigger deficit, approximately 500,000. And then we've also got the option around have a 4.9% average rate rise and try to cut $500,000 out of the budget. I'm sure members are aware that's been a bit of a difficult conversation over the past couple of workshops, with there not being a lot left within the budget to cut after we had already culled as much as things as we could. The other thing with that particular option in terms of achievability is that there's probably a number of things within that would give concerns to the community and have a high community impact as well. So whether or not that's something that council would be willing to risk. Talking about potential savings. So we've been back through the budget to try and put together a list of things that are more activity based rather than service based. And these are the only things that were of a significant amount that could be cut, but they would all have significant community impacts, or impacts to service delivery, or impacts to council strategy actions not being achieved as well. So there are community grants that total up to over $200,000 in the budget. What that would do would mean that things like our festival and events grants, our building facility grants, our community grants wouldn't be offered. So there would be a high risk in terms of council's reputation and community concern raised from those. So that's the sort of format we've tried to follow in terms of the other items. We could be the Grinch and cut off the Christmas decorations. It's $20,000, but it is $20,000. Again, that would have some reputational risks. Culture strategy actions, again, reputational risks and service delivery risks in terms of achieving your strategy actions. We have $100,000 in the budget for service level reviews, and that would impact service delivery, legal and compliance and financial management, because they're the way that we identify any gaps or whether there is more efficient ways of doing things, and set council up for future growth. Destination brand activities and climate change education would all have reputational, service delivery, environmental impacts, as well as being part of council's endorsed strategies where those actions fall out. In addition to previous years, administration will always look to find more grant funding throughout the year, as well as look for cost efficiencies and savings through procurement processes and efficiencies within administration throughout the year as well. So they're the considerations really in terms of the main items that we could pick out that could have an immediate impact to the budget. Cutting services in terms of different areas within council and services that are provided is problematic in terms of if we cut those services, there really should be community consultation. If council, say, suddenly decided to cut one of the community services offerings, there would be a big community impact. There wouldn't be immediate savings. There's grant funding that is implicated. There could be contracts that are implicated. So they're not as easy things to cut out, and a longer term or strategic decision of council. So what we're after...
Can I just ask in terms of how much are we going...
Sorry. Two things. One, can you explain culture strategy actions again in a bit more what that means? And also, how much money are we giving to Business Victor Harbour, and what are we sharing with Business Victor Harbour in terms of what are they doing with the money, and what are we also doing as a shared service with them?
Yeah. So the amount that's in the budget, I believe, is $156,000. That's the cash contribution to Business Victor. But I might hand over to Graham to answer the arts and culture strategy question.
Sorry, part of that, there's the cash contribution to Business Victor Harbour, but there's also a big contribution that we are doing in relation to economic development in conjunction with Business Victor Harbour. So looking at that.
That's the destination branding activities, so the 51,500. So that is the collaborative approach in terms of that brand, Victor Harbour, the web content, digital content, and investment attraction. But there's an actual agreement with Business Victor Harbour. I think the agreement, 3-year agreement, comes to fruition at the end of the financial year, or is up for review. and there was the deliverables out of that is around the partnership of delivery and sharing economic development. We don't have an economic development officer on staff, and they are using those funds to resource administrative support and actually just work in collaboration with economic development activities with Victor Harbour.
It's not what Marcus Will was economic.
No, he's city activation, so he oversees visitor information, arts and cultural precinct, and city activation. He does do economic development, so he is our liaison with Regional Development Australia, but he doesn't do the traditional work that an economic development officer solely, that is their responsibility, would do. He oversees a number of other functions.
And the culture strategy actions are those coming out of Council's Arts and Culture Strategy. They get determined or not determined, determined really with the advice of the Arts and Culture Committee. So there's nothing specific that's planned yet. Once Council adopts the budget, it'll be through the reference group for some consideration. But those are the sorts of things that add additional activation opportunities to our venues, our arts and culture type venues. Things like what's called TEDx and some of those sorts of event style things, as well as other activation opportunities yet to be determined.
So in terms of the presentation, that's basically, we'll go on to the next steps. But what we're after is essentially Council's feedback around the engagement document that's been provided. We've provided a workshop report that talks through the changes that have happened to the capital and operating budget, which we can go into after. But I guess first we're looking to have a look at that the engagement summary and deal with any of those issues, so we can take on board Council's feedback for presenting the final draft of the budget for adoption. So I'm happy to open to the floor if you have any questions. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I think the overall feedback from the community, both at the community forum, in writing, and the survey submission, is that they'd like to see some further reduction of the budget. Obviously, the feedback is the deficit's too high. In a time of high cost of living and people are struggling, they'd like to see some further work done on the budget to try to reduce it down. And I think there's opportunities for the elected members to have a look through, and it's good that admin have mentioned some areas. There's other areas I believe that we can look at, and I will talk to some of the capital items that I think can be deferred. But again, with some of the opportunities for business Victor, some of the marketing activities and so forth, we still have the opportunity to defer them. And for 1 year, it's not significantly a long time frame, but it's going to have a big impact. So it may be things that we consider as elected members that is worth doing for a interim 1 year to assist the community. And whilst it may impact our strategies and other areas, I understand that, but if we explain that to the community, so things like community grants and so forth, if we can't afford to do it, we can't afford to do it.
Sorry, Councillor Burns. Lance, sorry, your microphone going up and down is very distracting. I'm not sure whether it's because you can't get the sound correctly. Is that what you're trying to do? I'm sorry, it's just very distracting.
Yes, sorry, I have finished.
Okay,
I
thank you.
conducted a test to see what the audio level was in the chamber,
Okay.
the gallery.
Thank you.
Terrible.
Councillor Burns, just to your question, so capital items aren't going to have an impact on the operating deficit?
I wasn't talking about capital items. I said I'll talk about capital items later. I was talking purely about operation.
Okay. And the other thing I think it's important to note is the council adopted a deficit position in its long-term financial plan for a couple of years, and that was obviously utilising borrowings because of not raising significant rates, and that is a way in which council can keep the rates down. So the concern, or I think it's explaining to the community, surplus budget, deficit budget, it's the way in which council can actually carry some of those costs and not relaying them onto the community through rate rising in the initial stages.
Councillor Henderson?
The Chamber has worked on this budget for many months, and we've taken everything out that I think we possibly can to have a slim, tight budget, and I'm happy to leave it exactly as it is.
Any other negatives?
Look, I think that given that, yes, we had 27 people attending the meeting, that's 27 people out of, you know, a ratepayer base of 10,000 or whatever. And a number of the points raised at the meeting could be explained in terms of the reasons why we've got the deficit that we do, what the support rep precinct is doing in relation to budget, some of the rhetoric at that meeting which you've put in here in terms of find it. The public consultation was the worst I've ever seen, and all of that rhetoric. I don't think that that is valid information, given that the public consultation actually worked through from the website, direct email, public notices, advertising on the 11th of June, 16th of June, 18th of June, 25th of June, e-newsletters on the 11th of June with over 2,500 emails sent, Your Say website, City Activation website, social media on the 9th, 16th, 23rd of June, the foyer display, council newsletter and all the media. You know, the public consultation has been very thorough, and you know, so I certainly don't hold any of what that particular person said in high regard, because it was false. The corporate systems project, I think, is something that many people don't understand, and that is going to achieve efficiencies. The issue with the cricket club, while I can understand them wanting to have that road changed, that's quite expensive, and it would be cheaper if council helped them with the nets. And I think,
Sorry, I was just going to talk on, which Jodie can probably expand on. If council can, and there was a deputation made, so I think we costed originally at about $30,000, and that's for consideration design. It's not to actually relocate the road, and that research and design may look at relocating the nets rather than relocating the road, and that would be a capital item, so it may be something council wishes to consider when we do put into council. So while I think there was a discussion about moving the road, that piece of work would enable council to have the detail they needed to see whether the nets need to be relocated or realigned, or the road. But it was a $30,000 budget bid that unfortunately didn't make it through, but it's not to say it can't come back, and that would be a capital item, not.
so that would be a capital one.
Correct.
Okay. So that would be good to look. If it's a capital item, then maybe putting that in, and that's not going to make any difference to rates. And it will enable us to look at what the best process is for that. But I actually agree with Marilyn in that we've gone through significant process, and I know that the council has made this a really lean budget with a lot of things out that we've wanted to have in, and I don't particularly think that there should be any changes at this point in time. You may want to rearrange some of the footpaths and road when that's going to come in for next year, but I think at this point in time, I'd leave it as it is.
Sorry, Councillor Burns.
Thank you. So just a little clarification on what you just said. At the community consultation, the representative from the club asked about the Victor Harbour Road at the entrance, work not being done, and Jody assured that there was money in the open spaces and that it would be going ahead. You're saying that it's not the case?
Yeah, no, Jodie didn't assure, she said that there are...
Or she confirmed?
Yeah, but she'd also corresponded directly with the cricket club after that meeting to confirm neither of those items were in the budget and that would be come up for consideration. Obviously, there were a number of surveys that the cricket club members sent in about asking why it wasn't in, but those funds were not in the budget, so happy to refer to Jodie.
Yes, thanks, Victoria. So at the meeting, that I said that was what had been discussed previously, and I was following it up, and I did that the following day, and all council members were copied into that email that went to the cricket club to confirm that neither of those things were currently in the budget.
Okay. If we're talking about capital items, I've got some questions I can. I had a look through the capital budget and I couldn't see where the Tabernacle and Mills Road footpath was. Now, maybe in there, consolidated, I just want to confirm, is it in there? And if it isn't, my understanding is there was a conversation that occurred with both Jodie and the Mayor, with Tony Ward, who confirmed that it would be done.
We did have a conversation with Mr. Ward, and I think, did I see him up the back there? Franny. We did prepare a budget bid, and that's what we confirmed we would do, and it was presented to council members. It didn't make it into the draft budget. It was priority number 83, and the money ran out at number 857. So again, it's up to council to decide whether they wanted to change priorities of the capital budgets that were in that spreadsheet that was presented in the previous workshops. The information was prepared and provided to council members.
I think it was framed that we'd run out of money at this point, rather than I think administration had prioritised and presented it to a group of members.
No, it's not just prioritised. There's a matrix that the staff will go through, which looks at your asset management plans that are endorsed by council in terms of priority of works that they needed to be done. And that assessment rating is based on useful life, or the life of the asset, safety and other projects. So it's not just done by administration. We then present that to members with that matrix and that scoring, and we show what is above the line and below the line.
So we still have an opportunity to...
It's the council's budget. You adopt the budget as we've gone through these workshops, and also the council's made some decisions along the way to include items like the one of Colbatch and Day Road that Councillor Kemp moved at a council meeting to have it brought forward from the asset management plans into this budget for the design. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Just to talk on the first part of this process is about the community feedback, the public consultation. Yes, we did a very good job getting out to the community. We took every avenue possible that we could take to get the community on board. Unfortunately, why the community doesn't respond? Something I think council needs to ask a lot of questions about themselves. Why is the community not responding to this? And there's another reason people have said to me, because they say the council doesn't listen. We put in our responses and council does not listen, irrespective of how many people put back in. So it's something that we need to think about as we move forward. But again, the overwhelming information that I got out of it was that they don't want 1.5%. It's too extravagant. We got a too much higher deficit. Potentially, maybe we're trying to deliver more than we can actually do. So we are being a little bit too aggressive in our asset management plan. Same with the long-term financial plan. It's a plan of assumptions, except for the first year or the second year is the most valid you get close to what a plan would look like. But I think that you can set a long-term financial plan up, same with an asset management plan in that sense, to really be flamboyant or very aggressive in that area. And I think the community's picked up on that maybe we are being a little bit more than what we can actually deliver. And that comes back because of all the WIP programs, the processes that, you know, projects do get stopped at council. So I think the community's aware of that. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough to come back. If we had 70% of our ratepayers responded in the same format, I guess we'd be having a different conversation in that respect. I disagree with the other members about, you know, we've done our best to cut back the budget. I believe that we haven't done enough. I know we've done a number of workshops and we went through the capital of what's currently in the asset management plan, then we looked at what the additional bits that didn't get up. But the operating side, and I'm not really concerned about the capital budget because it doesn't have a major impact on operating budget in the way of raising rates. But the putting in additional small items into the capital budget is not going to be a game breaker or anything like that. I think the operating budget, personally myself, as I remember, we got delivered a basic budget of what the staff has said they start from zero, took it up, built it back, SMT took it apart, put it back down to the budget officers and say redo it because there's too much in there, cut more out. But we as elected members, and we don't have the information that administration have into what we can cut, what can we stop delivering. We have a very broad-based knowledge, I think. We don't have the detailed knowledge as the staff have. So I think, you know, if we as a change said this is too excessive, which some don't, I believe it's a very fine budget, but I just think it is too excessive. Continuing having to give us this every year, I think if we had the knowledge of the staff, I think we could find some savings in there, but the members don't have that information, that level of information that administration has.
The members get a line-by-line budget. You've had the detailed budget,
so
and part of what you endorsed as a council are the service level reviews. So you initiated those last financial year, where we're looking at every single service to do a service level review to provide that independent oversight as to whether current services are at the level and expectations of our community, the council, and are we delivering it efficiently? So you've instigated that. So the members can at any time look to reduce or remove a service. Obviously there's risks and the implications of that.
Yes, I understand that and I appreciate your comments. But I guess when we've got a 74-page document of budget lines, we still don't know the ins and outs of, oh, let's cut money off that. Why? I mean, you look at some of those cost lines and they're way above CPI. And so why aren't they above CPI? I thought we were supposed to stick to CPI as a base document to see where we're sitting at. And when we consider that we are receiving another around about $2.4 million extra in growth, or through valuations and growth, no, not growth, but that's the nuance, but out of valuations and that. So how come that 2.4 million can't be used? You know, because that's additional than what we would have budgeted for, I would have thought. But maybe I got that wrong, but I'm just trying to understand that. How do you set the budget? Do you go through and look at your income and set your expenses, or do you set your expenses and look at what income you get and then you've got a deficit? So I guess I'm just trying to understand the process that you take around, because sometimes you can create figures to fit a figure to send a picture out there to what it's really like. But I still think that we still could save more money out of the operating budget to reduce. I think we can be on a 4.9% rate rise and cut 1.5% out, because that's what most of the people who responded wants. I think we should look at that, and I think we can do it. I remember in our first term of council back in 2018, administration or Northern Victoria saved $500,000 from a resolution of council in the first month of the new council. So again, it can be achieved, it can be done. So I just think the budget is not as lean as some people think it is. I think there's a bit more in there that we can actually reduce down. Because we talk about cost of living crisis, we all talk about that and how bad it is and how it affects income people, all etc. etc. Yeah, here we are. No, we're just 6.4, not a problem.
So just to answer the question around the budget being put together, budget officers have no idea what the revenue is going to look like until finance does that, and that's one of the last things that we do. So what they need to build their budgets up on is user charges that they can get quantities and volumes for, times what is being put into the fees and charges register, based on historic numbers and or assumptions around growth and what's going to happen in that space. In terms of expenses, it's based on previous budgets isn't one indicator, but also looking at what the services are and how much it costs to deliver those services. So where there's items, particular lines that have gone up by more than CPI, that would be where we have a contract in place or we have had procurement throughout the year, and we'll actually, part of the process that we went through in cutting out that 700,000 was to go back and go, okay, simple line, pest control expenses, how many times do they do it, times the current rate, is there a CPI increase, and what is that? And that's how much the person needs next year for that particular line. So actually went through line by line to double check each and every one of those calculations and formulas to make sure that there was methodology and science behind what was actually put in there. So that was how we were able to basically cut out that 700,000, was by going, no, we're actually pulling that right back. There's no allowance in there for additional services. You're having exactly what you need, and then we'll have to come back to council if something changes. So nobody's building it to the revenue level. Used to be in days gone past, we would just do expenses and then go, okay, so how much do we need to raise rates to cover that? We don't do that anymore. The income side is purely based around what is CPI as a start point, and how close can we get to matching to covering our expenses by either reducing expenses or having to have that increase in rates. So that has been basically the process we've gone through this year. The long-term financial plan provides that we needed a number of deficits to get back into a surplus position because of decisions made by previous chambers and previous budgets. And that's what we've got being presented for 26-27 is one of those deficits. There will be another one probably next year. And hopefully the year after that there won't be, or there'll be a very small one. But that's how much that is required to get us back into that position over a few years.
Can I also just add to that, Councillor Kemp? So some of those increases, well, significant costs are in this budget that have not been in your last year's budget. There is nearly $300,000 worth of election costs are in this budget. That is something that doesn't happen every year. There's also significant increases of fuel for FRAWA and also our own uses. Significant increases in insurance. The insurance costs have not gone up by CPI. They've gone up between 10 and 15% in many areas, and council is having to obviously increase its cost to cover those insurances. So there are some lines that have increased above CPI. Many haven't gone up by CPI, but there are some significant lines in there that are a lot more than we would have ever budgeted for in previous years.
Just further to that too, when talking about a $1.9 million deficit, depreciation has gone up by about 1.5 from this year to 26-27, and then you add in the 300,000 for the elections, which is a once every cycle. That's where your deficit is, just in those two items, if you're looking at just those two on its own. So the fact that we've been able to find those savings and get back to a $1.9 million deficit is actually amazing, with a 4.9% CPI that was applied, across relevant items in the rest of the budget. I think Councillor Henderson had her hand up before, and then Councillor Lance.
I just wanted to say I strongly disagree with Councillor Kemp's opinion of the feedback from our engagement. If people were really negative, they would be feeding back. People who are happy tend to sit back because they're happy. And I can tell you, I was in a meeting this morning and every single ratepayer in that room was very happy. They hadn't fed back to the engagement, but I know they were happy because that was the discussion. And they were of the opinion that we're doing a lot of good things, putting money into facilities that the community can appreciate, And they realise that comes at a cost, and they're happy to pay the rates to cover that cost. We all know, however, it's well known in the world, that if people feel strongly about something, they will feedback. And the people who feel most strongly are those who have negative comments to say. In my 7.5 years of being on council, mixing with dozens of people every week, hundreds per month, I haven't had one single person say to me that they will not feed back to council because they're not listened to. I've never heard that once from our community.
We must move in different circles.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you. Just seeking some clarification, the financial sustainability index that is proposed to be added to the CPI, that will go against the operational budget. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The reason I'm asking that was when that was introduced in 2024, it was to maintain community assets. There hadn't been the level of investment in assets over a number of councils, and the ratio was obviously low and needs to be increased. And I'm supportive that we need to maintain a certain level of asset renewals and so forth. But wouldn't the normal capital items be covered by our capital budget borrowings?
So the operating surplus ratio, so the financial sustainability index, the 1.5 on top of CPI, becomes our general rate revenue in our operating budget, and then is used for all the services that council delivers, including repairs and maintenance on assets, but doesn't have anything to do with, particularly with the capital expenditure.
But it's still, because as it got explained to us as elected members, it was primarily for maintaining community assets, was how it was described. So that's addressing the shortfall in asset maintenance and renewals, correct?
That could have been one of the reasons that the sustainability ratio was put in there, and it certainly would be one that is one of the reasons why the financial sustainability ratio is there this year, because having had lower than CPI rate increases in past years has impacted council's ability to deliver services, maintain its assets, and service other needs within the community. So there's a number of reasons that isn't the only one.
Okay. My other question was the CEO office. There's a large amount allocated to that, which I understand correctly, if it's wrong, is where grant funding gets put, or amongst other costs. Is that correct?
Are you talking about the expenditure line or the income line?
The income line.
Yes, so I think I was asked that question at the public forum as well. So there is one significant grant that goes in there that has two components, which is the financial assistance grants. So that's the local roads grant and the general purpose grants that are provided through the state government based on our grants commission returns that we do in the prior year. They're in that particular area because they're untied, meaning that we don't have to spend them on anything specific. If we had to spend them on something specific, they would be in the project area that they related to. But this is a general grant that is provided to all councils.
So the money doesn't go into general revenue, it goes into specific accounts related to the project?
No, this one goes into general revenue, whereas ones where we apply for a grant for a particular road, you would see that grant within the road project. Whereas this one is untied, so it's just sitting within the general revenue.
I understand that. Things like, say, the exploited precinct grant, for example,
That
would go against a specific project, against a specific account line item?
Within the budget, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't pulled together in general revenue, that's all, but it was separated out and reflected accordingly.
It's separated for the purposes of budget reporting.
Yeah.
We don't have separate bank accounts, so they will basically all be used in exactly the same way to reduce our reliance on borrowings, dependent on our cash flow.
Okay, and why isn't there separate bank accounts? Well, I noticed in the Audit and Risk Committee, the 4th of August, Michelle Bennett said that all grants should be in separate bank accounts. Pulling them together is not compliant. So why wouldn't you have it separate?
She actually said the opposite to that, in that we had too many bank accounts and that we should consolidate them or not have them if we can use the money better for cash flow and reduce our borrowings. So council does have a number of reserves or separate bank accounts where it's required to by legislation. So her comments prompted a review where we actually reduced the number of bank accounts we had so that we could use those funds rather than drawing down on borrowings.
Okay, so it's the video and the transcript will take them on board. Thank you.
You might want to rewatch them because she specifically said unless the grant specifies that we're required to have a separate bank account, we should not have as many bank accounts. Councillor Schiller.
The big cruncher for me is that we have to acknowledge those 3 years where we were either didn't raise at CPI or didn't raise, I can't remember, I only remember the first year which I was a part of, and we were, I think it was around 6.5% and actual CPI was more like 7% at the time. And that's what's the difficulty, and I think we've got to correct that over the next couple of years. And moving on with our councils, we've got to be very diligent with our CPI and acknowledge that if we don't take the advice of our Audit and Risk Committee and add those sustainability indexes in there, we are not going to be sustainable. So because of those years where we had, I think we should have had 16% raise, and it was about 13.8, is that correct? That we've gone up over the...
Correct.
Yeah. So that is the cruncher. That's, if that wasn't the case, the 1.5% sustainability index does look high, but we need to correct it. So I'm willing to make sure we, over the next couple of years, get that back on track and encourage that councillors and administration, we all work together to make sure we push for the true figure that needs to go, particularly with CPI, because we've had COVID, we thought that was a once in a lifetime event. We're now going to have bird flu, that's going to be a once in a lifetime event. We've had 7% CPI, we probably thought that was a one-time event. So from now and forever, we're going to have times where there's going to be something that's going to trip us up either economically or our community. So we've got to be really sure that we don't underestimate what we need to put in the budget, particularly with CPI.
So, and just to add to that, Councillor Schiller, it was actually 8.6% in 1 year was the CPI, which was an absolute kicker that we obviously didn't see coming, and algal bloom was another thing. We managed to be successful in a number of grants for the state government through the algal bloom to offset some of our costs, and that would be something we would certainly would encourage any incoming administration to continue to do so, because we've actually demonstrated each year the council has had deficit budgets, but we have finished the year with a much less deficit, or in some cases a surplus.
Had ACPI quarters in March each year from 21, 22 to 25, 26, and also the rate increases for those that same period that we're talking about. Just quickly go through it. The 21-22 was 1.5% CPI. We didn't raise rates in that year, but the rates were 2.9%. 22-23 CPI was 4.3, the rates were 4.7. 23-24 was 8.6 CPI, and the rates were 6.6. 24-25, 4.1% CPI, 6% rate rise, and 25-26, 2.2% CPI and 5% rate rise. So the argument that people are using that we're playing catch up and we didn't raise rates. Well, sorry, the figures show that we're above, positive that we've raised rates more than not. It's only 1 year that we weren't above CPI. The rest of the time we were. So I don't understand the point of an argument that's been put around this chamber that we're playing catch up because we didn't raise rates through a 5-year period. So I just don't get that.
I think the statement was made, it's not through 5 years, it was through 3 years. It was from 2020 to 21, 21, 22, 22, 23. So there was no rates raised, no increase to rates was made in 2021, and it was below CPI in those other years. Only in 3 of those years, I think was the statement that's been made, and it was in the draft.
Well,
So the figures that we were quoting were around COVID. So from 2021, in March, there was CPI of 2.4 and a 0% rate rise. The next year was a rate rise of 2.5 compared to 1.2, 4.7 across, and then 23-24 rate rise was 6.6 and CPI was 7.9. So across those years of COVID and then after that, we had 16.2% was CPI and 13.8 was what was raised. We've been playing catch up since then. And so that's what those indexes, the financial sustainability indexes over the past 3 years plus next year were to do, was to get us back on track, not only with rate rises that were below CPI, but the cumulative effect of those rate rises being below CPI.
yeah, and thank you for that. And I do, again, just agree because, again, my research, my figures show slightly different to yours. The point is, playing catch up is not always the answer. Sometimes it's just cut expenditure and work within the means of what we've got. So that's the other alternative of financial modelling. But this council tends to keep pushing the wheelbarrow of just raising rates.
Do you have some suggestions that we can investigate that you specifically think we should look to cut?
Certainly, if I had the information that you had, certainly would, but maybe I need a bit, maybe give me another couple of months and I'll research it.
But you should be aware of what services council delivers. It's just a matter of naming a service or a program, and we can then provide you with those details.
Well, sometimes it's not so much cutting the actual service, sometimes it's about reducing the expenditure in a department, and that's
the department delivers the service and the programs, so the department's just not there waiting. The budget actually determines every hour and every project and every service and every program. So the departments exist to deliver those things. So as I'm saying, if you're able to list or identify something you would like to consider cutting, we can give you that information as to salaries, any other costs associated with it, the program, what the income is. And that's part of that line by line item we give members, gives you the income and the expenses, and also the salary costings for every area.
Yeah. All right, I'll do some more research.
And just in terms of that information, I have exactly the same information that you have. And so when we go through it and I check it to see, the team checks it to say, is this reasonable? We're looking at previous data and service volumes and usage volumes, and then going, yes, that is reasonable, it meets the requirements of the budget. So I'm looking at essentially the same data that you are, but then having the benefit of being able to go into the system and look at historic volumes, essentially, around what that service delivery costs.
I was just going to say there may be an opportunity at the community forum, a question to ask about the computer system, and Karen, I thought, answered fairly well with some productivity and potential savings with FTEs. However, I was struggling to see where we actually realise cost savings, because if you reduce FTEs from one cost centre, but you actually relocate people to another cost centre, it nets out, so the cost is still the same in the budget. You've improved, changed the cost centres, but not the overall amount. So maybe there's opportunities through the restructuring, which the enterprise agreement allows, where there's potentially reducing some staff in areas, so maybe that's.
Well, the enterprise agreement hasn't anything to do with restructuring. That would be something your CEO may look to do. But we've said all along, obviously, we are in the infancy of implementing and utilising the new corporate system. And yes, part of the requirement of KPI is looking at those efficiencies. And I have stated very clearly that as this council area grows in area, and we are having $11 million of assets recently handed to council, we will need to increase our costs in operations and arts and gardens and open space resourcing. And rather than coming back to council for looking for that resourcing, we would find efficiencies through the corporate system from an internal service, because we wouldn't be replacing resources, and we would be transitioning those to our outside staff. That is an efficiency. The council is not shrinking, it is growing, and those areas will continue to grow. We certainly will continue to report to council on those efficiencies, and we have been in this first infancy, and you've got those reports. But yes, there is still a lot more to be gained through the new corporate system. Councillor Schiller, sorry, Councillor Mayor Jenkins, then Councillor Schiller, sorry.
Thank you. Look, we've had since the end of last year, budget workshops. We've had the line by line, we've gone over it. And I know there's been a number of elected members that have come to see you, that have gone to see Kelly to ask questions if they have not understood the budgets or want to query a line. There's been emails that have gone through about the budget and queries. There's been lots of opportunities to ask. And the elected members who've been here either 4 years or 8 years now, we're in the last, just near the end of the term. So there's been 8 budgets or 4 budgets that people have gone through. And so if they're not sure, they should be sure now how it works. I think that there's been plenty of opportunity. I agree with Councillor Schiller in terms of if we keep putting rates down artificially and keeping them down artificially, then we're going to be playing big catch-up. And I don't see us going into an economic time where people can afford to play big catch-ups. I think we've got a really lean budget here. I'm really happy with the way that the elected body as a whole have looked at it and voted on it so far, and have put things in and out. I think the staff have done a great job, because it has been difficult and it's really lean. And I'd hate us to take out services that the community really needs at this point in time, because economically they depend on council for a huge amount of services. And at a time when it's tough for council as well. Everything's gone up. So I'm happy with this budget. I think it's a good balance between what we need and what we can move forward.
Councillor Schiller.
Just a comment about the productivity we're looking at. Ideally, it's very difficult to actually reduce staff in that we are growing, and it's hard to compare the growth as opposed to what we're delivering with services, with that complexity of not knowing the increase of our services. But if our growth of employees is less than growth itself, that is indicating a productivity gain anyway. But I'd say it still needs to be compared to whether the services are expanding to get the comparison of the total amount of employees and the total amount of services that we deliver.
Councillor Kemp?
I was just going to talk to the capital budget. I like to put up that the entrance of Relong to the double oval of that 30,000 be included in the capital budget. I think that it's about safety to look at that. There's a lot of children that get run over in car parks and driveways, etc. I hate to have a child hit by a car when they're trying to retrieve a ball where the cricket nets are right next to the entrance of the oval, especially in the summer. and also the Tabernacle footpath to Mill Road to be looked at as well, because that will complete the Tabernacle section of footpath for people to actually connect to the Mill Road footpath infrastructure. So I think a short distance is a requirement, you know, for our elderly people who will go across through that area. So I'd like to put those two in. As I said before, capital doesn't have a great impact, and this is under $100,000 increase in capital, which I think we will notice it. But the benefits will be great.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Just a comment. I just want to make this comment because I think we as a chamber, not just now but into the future, any chamber sitting here into the future, needs to be also looking at the bigger picture. And that bigger picture is that state level of government is constantly and gradually removing support for many of the services and handing those over to local government. And this is part of the bigger picture. The library is one of those. The state government is gradually removing funding from all of our public libraries. And of course, the local government in every situation has to pick up the remaining cost to run that service. So I just make that comment as a general comment as part of that bigger picture.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. So in terms of the engagement documentation and also the workshop report, there were a few changes which we've already highlighted. There are a couple of projects that were identified where there was a small amount of WIP that would need to come across, and that has been built into the budget. And there was one change within the operating budget around some vehicle lease costs. So in terms of Councillor Kemp.
I think I was just wait for you to finish, but since you mentioned the council, the vehicle lease cost, is it my understanding that, you know, the reason why we don't have a complete lease arrangement for all our vehicles is because, you know, we get the resale value of trade-ins, which is more profitable than leasing vehicles. So we are what now, leasing vehicles?
So we have done some feasibility studies before to see whether or not it was better for us to lease or buy. Buying for council vehicles was definitely the way to go in terms of that trade-in value. The leased vehicles are vehicles that are tied essentially to programs that are grant funded, so that those costs can go directly as an expense against the grant funding. So this is in regards to community services lease costs.
Yeah, thank you. And the other one, what is the true cost of the encounter centre? I know you got 70,000 in the operating budget for that, but is there going to be a larger cost because of the staff transferring from the encounter centre to under the umbrella of council, and what are the impacts for that? So what is the true cost of the encounter centre project for 3 years?
So the 70,000 that we've included in there is the net value, so that was the amount that council endorsed as what would be council's additional contribution to that. The full budget has been built up with essentially income of $210,000, $210,500, and then the salaries and wages, advertising, the events and functions, cleaning, all the building services, contractors, repairs and maintenance, come to $280,500. So the net value is the $70,000 that council endorsed.
Thank you.
Councillor Burns?
Just on that point, I just want to confirm that any employees coming over from the encounter centre will be engaging in new employment contracts with the council.
They already have, they're effective as of 1st of July.
And all their previous benefits and
All
paid
taken
out.
care of, nothing to do with the City of Victor Harbour.
Right, thank you.
Can I just declare a conflict of interest? And if there's any further discussion in relation to the Encounter Centre, as I'm chair of the Encounter Centre Inc., I will leave the room.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Is there any other discussion in terms of the engagement summary, any more information or any other changes that you would like to put up, Councillor Burns?
Just two things. One, I know we have a 3-year time frame for a lot of the computer items for laptops, phones and so forth. Is there an opportunity to push that out to 4 years? Because that would save over $228,000. I mean, servers and so forth are normally replaced or looked at after 5 years, not 3 years. So, and I understand, you know, that if they were leased, it's one thing, but these are capital expenditures. The other, I still have a problem with the Jenky Road road widening for the buses, because I think that's more beneficial to the school than it is to the community, and the school should be paying for that, not the council.
Well, as a council road, same argument, I guess, student safety, children as the cricket grounds, but it is a council road, and yes, it will benefit the school. It also is a safety issue for that particular intersection. But again, that is up to the council. If you choose to pull it out, you can do so at the council meeting and seek support of your fellow members. I just want to ask Karen to answer your question regarding the equipment, because I know we've actually rotating those renewals, so she can answer that.
Thank you for your question. We have, based on feedback you've given us before, Councillor Burns, we've actually looked at the replacement cycles. We've tried to spread the load of the capital purchases so that it's not all a big hit in 1 year, which also helps us in terms of workload with replacing them. But we've added an operating cost of an additional warranty so that we do hold on to the devices for a longer period of time, but they're still supported, which is the key bit to not impacting our staffing and resources by having devices that don't have appropriate support. So we have taken your advice on board.
Okay, is there any other information or suggestions, feedback, exclusions for us to build in?
Council may just need to be aware of the items that they've already endorsed in the interim capital budget, and that includes Jenky Road. So if you want to take it out, we've already started work on things that need to be a resolution to stop.
Would actually need a rescission motion, which you're probably not going to get. So again, there are a few items like the Day Road, Colbatch Road was a previous decision of the chamber, so they were already included, endorsed inclusion. And how we do it and different platforms and all the different socials, newspapers, public forums, shopping centre meetings, town hall meetings. When the community wants to and it really affects them, they do get involved. We've seen it with some things that become quite emotive. I just like to say that local government is the only level of government that actually consults before it endorses a budget. Your state and federal government just hand you down a budget, and your state and federal government just take your tax straight from you every single day of your life. So we are 4% of the taxes that we pay, and it's because we send you a bill in your mail and you get it in the post, and we ask you to pay it by instalment or whatever it may be. I know it doesn't make it easier, but as a level of government, we are the only one that consults. And so I would encourage you as elected members, as your community representatives, to speak more broadly, go into circles you don't normally talk to, and try and encourage people to actually get involved and participate in this. I can talk about it till cows come home, but it is really important that the community are involved. But ultimately, you are the decision makers and you take on board the feedback, but you have more information than they do. That's your job as council members, and you have to look at that strategic focus and make those hard decisions sometimes.
So just in terms of next steps, so take on board the feedback that we've received tonight. We'll look at updating, making final updates to the annual business plan and budget, and looking to call the medical special council meeting next Monday, which will include 3 different reports that have to go in a certain order under the regulations, which is adoption of the annual business plan, then the budget, then the declaration of rates. I know it takes a little while to go through all those declaration of rates bits, but we do have to do it in that type of order. We will include some commentary within the report about those 2 extra capital projects that were mentioned in terms of the cricket club and the Tabernacle Road, should know. And in terms of whether or not that needs to be moved on the night to be included or whether we build it in, obviously can't have a decision tonight, so I can't even ask for a display of hands of who would like it in there. So,
Sorry to interrupt you, Kelly. Can I just ask, will the inclusion of those extra things impact on rates, or is it because it's a capital?
No,
project?
they won't impact on rates.
Yeah.
But I will pull them out separately because I think because they came back through the consultation, I think it's important that they are highlighted.
Yeah.
As is noting the feedback you've received from the community. Whether you can take it all on board or not is again up to a decision of the chamber.
And based on what we have at the moment, we'll be putting up the annual business plan and budget with the 6.4% that went out to consultation. Obviously, council can move a different way on the night, and that will we'll provide all the commentary around that so that you can make a decision on the night. But thank you very much for all of your feedback and input during the budget preparation, and hopefully we'll be able to have an endorsed budget next week.